I'm so honored to be the first to be able to welcome you to the 4th Annual National Forum on Women and Bicycling. Thank you so much for being here. We're so grateful that you're here for the National Bike Summit, and we have an amazing agenda and program lined up for you today. As some of you know, my name is Carolyn Shapansky, and I have worn many hats here at the League of American Bicyclists, and had the privilege of launching the Women Bike Program in 2012. And some of you have probably heard this story. In fact, some of you are part of this story, in that the seeds that really started this program, this event, were planted on a boat in Chattanooga, Tennessee. It was at the Alliance Leadership Retreat. It was 2010. I was fresh to bicycle advocacy, and I was so inspired by all of the amazing people I was learning from at this gathering of bicycle advocates. But there was a palpable sense of urgency around something that remained unspoken, which was the persistent gender gap in bicycling, and the lack of sustained attention around that, and the relatively unexamined landscape of who really has power within the bicycle movement to affect change. Who are the leaders? Who are the people who are really driving the agenda? And so there was an impromptu women's caucus at this on the boat in Chattanooga, Tennessee, at the Alliance Leadership Retreat. And we only had the chance to gather and share ideas for about an hour, but we all knew we wanted to be part of an effort to elevate and catalyze this conversation in a sustained way, to make issues of gender and equity a more integral part of our daily discourse as it relates to bicycle advocacy. And so thanks to the opportunities here at the League, starting this program, and more importantly, all the work that you guys do at the local level in your communities, we've done just that. We've started that conversation in a way that has been meaningful and has lasted and has grown over the past 4 years. And just to illustrate that, how many of you have initiated a program, started a business, started a riding group that has the specific intention of getting more women involved as riders, advocates, and leaders? How many of you have done that? Wow, excellent. And how many of you have even simply had a conversation within your organization thinking deeply about who you serve and how you can expand the folks that you interact with and the folks that you benefit through your work? Yay, excellent. So clearly we've seen tremendous progress over the past 4 years. This conversation has become part of the dialogue. But it's not enough to simply put out a welcome sign, plant a garden, paint the outside of the house. We also have to be really curious about the actual structure of what we do, the schematics of our house, the floor plan of our house, who built it, who does it serve? And that is really the deeper work that Women Bike is committed to moving forward. Really exciting. And as many of you know, we hired our first full-time Women Bike manager earlier this year in July. And Liz Cornish-Jones has a long background in education and community organizing and has a deep passion and expertise in organizational change. She's brought a radical perspective in the sense of looking at the roots of what is this gender inequity and what are some of the challenges there that we need to solve at the root level to the Women Bike program. And so it's fitting that this year's theme at the National Bike Summit is Bikes Plus, because Liz has brought a focus, has brought a perspective that's not just about adding new voices, but really changing the outcomes so that they are lasting, that they're sustainable, and that they're really changing the way that we do our work and the way that bicycle advocacy operates in the U.S. So very excited to kind of pass the torch to Liz Cornish-Jones here today. And I don't know how many of you were here last year and remember this from last year, but I'm going to invite us all to engage in active applause, which means that whenever a speaker comes up to start or to conclude, we give them a standing ovation, which is, it elevates your energy. It's a way to kind of keep your juices flowing throughout the day. And I can think of no person who deserves a standing ovation more than Liz Cornish-Jones. So without further ado, I will turn it over to her.
Good morning. It's the National Forum on Women and Bicycling. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you so much, Carolyn. You've been an amazing thought partner in this whole thing, and I just really look forward and value our continued working relationship. This year marks the 4th time the League of American Bicyclists has convened leaders in the bike movement to talk about women and bicycles. Many of you in this room have been having this conversation for much longer, and many, like me, are relatively new to the party. The National Forum on Women and Bicycling is designed as an intentional space for leaders of all gender identities, doing the work to get more women on bikes to come together to learn, connect, and be inspired. I am incredibly grateful for this year's lineup of awesome speakers that have been so generous with their time and talent to be with us here today. We know there is a gender gap in bicycling. And today, you are going to meet leaders in advocacy and business that are working hard to increase women's ridership. They are designing new products, they are developing new programs, and they are building and mobilizing communities of women who ride. But there is another gap in bicycling that we are hoping to discuss today, and that is a leadership gap. It's in my nature to look at root causes, and when I arrived at the League last July, and was asked to examine some of the barriers women experience to bicycling, I was struck by how powerless I was to address most of them from a desk in DC. There isn't an outreach or an encouragement program I could create that would somehow be better than the amazing community-based work that was already occurring. But why were these successful programs happening on such a small scale? Why were they consistently being led and championed by volunteers, or underfunded, or totally reliant on the scrappiness and inventiveness of underpaid women advocates? While it is true that roughly the same amount of women are engaged professionally in bicycling advocacy as men, women remain underrepresented in executive level roles and on nonprofit boards at advocacy organizations. And the same can be said of people of color and LGBT individuals. For the League, it was clear that in order to get more women on bikes, we needed more women in decision-making roles. I kept imagining what were the programs that were never making it out of the concept stage without a champion who also had the power to allocate the budget or raise the funds or generate board support. Which led us to this year's theme, bikes plus women leaders equals big ideas. To be clear, the gender gap in leadership is not just a bike movement issue, but something pervasive across all nonprofit and business sectors. But if we do intend to create a bicycle-friendly America for everyone, we need to begin to value diverse perspectives in bicycling by ensuring these perspectives are represented in our leadership teams and in our boardrooms. Because if we do indeed believe in bikes for all, we should all have an equal shot of getting a seat at the decision-making table. Respecting the diversity of personal experience is a key principle of a feminist pedagogy. It isn't enough to allow these diverse experiences to remain on the fringes. To respect diverse experiences, we must allow these perspectives to change our organizational outcomes. It isn't enough to have diversity change the optics of our movement. We must allow these perspectives to restructure our DNA. Because when we do, we create more effective solutions. Just like on a bike, when you add different gears, you stand a better chance at arriving at your destination faster and more efficiently. Another key principle of feminist pedagogy is power sharing. Women Bike believes that one key toward a more inclusive, diverse movement is reimagining existing structures of power and creating new ones. Rather than always promoting existing ideas that are reinforced by degrees or professional expertise, what happens when we greet new ideas with enthusiasm and open-mindedness rather than fear or indifference? Today, I would like to challenge each of you, as you meet new people and learn about their work, to truly allow it to inform your practice. Power sharing is about engaging in an exchange of ideas and both being open to having those ideas change you for the better. Will an engineer attend the session on how advocates at Multicultural Communities for Mobility mobilized residents in Boyle Heights and have it change the way her department does community outreach? Will a male executive attend the session on building powerful networks and rethink how existing policies or organizational culture maintain inequitable power structures? I hope so. Women Bike is more than just a campaign to encourage more women to ride. It is a program designed to promote deep inquiry into issues of gender equity in the bike movement, And more than just point out the imbalances, actively work towards solutions to create a more just, equitable bike movement for everyone. The good news, as evidenced by today's attendance, is that there are plenty of women ready to step into that role. You guys deserve it. You're amazing. Thank you for your leadership in the bike movement in your communities. Your stories are a constant source of inspiration in our work. We are grateful for your attendance and participation in today's events. You are the heart and soul of what I do. And in your role as attendees today, I want to encourage you to inspire others by sharing what you learn through social media. Please share your photos and quotes of the day by using the hashtag WomenBike or NBS15. I also want to thank our sponsors, who show their commitment to growing more women leaders in the bike movement by making events like the National Forum on Women in Bicycling possible. Thank you to VeloJoy, Advanced Sports International, and Darrow for supporting today's events. And now it is my pleasure to introduce two women leaders in the bike movement that are sure to inspire. And in their roles as CEO and immediate past president of the board, do their part and more to close the gender gap in leadership. Ren Barger and Barbara Bannon of the Tulsa Hub. Since its inception in 2009, Tulsa Hub has helped more than 270 adults earn reliable transportation and given more than 600 bikes to 2nd through 6th graders through their programs. The workshop, open Tuesdays and Thursdays, offers low or no-cost bicycle repair and equipment to over 1,000 additional riders annually. They also have the distinct pleasure of representing my hometown today, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Please give a warm welcome to Ren Barger and Barbara Bannon.
Good morning, everyone. All right, so this is a pretty early morning for someone coming from an hour earlier today, and I can only imagine how you left coasters must feel. So at any time that you'd like to get up and move around, drink some water, stretch out, please take care of yourselves. It is an awesome pleasure to be here with you all today. This is my 5th time that I've attended this summit and the 2nd time for the women bike section specifically. I've been with the League of American Bicyclists since 2006 when I became a league cycling instructor. And the Tulsa Hub has been a social justice organization changing lives through cycling for 7 years. My friend, colleague, and mentor, Barbara Bannon, is going to be joining us in just a moment. I'm going to walk you through a little bit about the Tulsa Hub, what our mission is and what our story is, and show you some of the things I find the most beautiful about it. And then Barbara will join us a little later and we'll talk a little deeper about the organizational development and training that she has helped me realize at this time in my career. I would like to thank Liz, of course, for inviting me to come and to represent Tulsa. I'd also like to thank Luis Vivanco and Sue Knopp, who published 2 books that I was exposed to through my work, and they made an indelible impact on the way that I view the type of work I want to continue doing through bicycling. And I'd also like to thank Adam Clark, who's in the room from Chicago, for building me my first road bike, a Rally Technium, 13 years ago, because I don't know if I would be here without his initial inspiration and equipment. Whenever I come to these conferences, I'm always so excited because it's a wonderful opportunity to share new experiences, learn new skills, make new friends, and maybe to fall in love. I always like to know how I'm going to get my money's worth when I start out with these, so here is the intention that Barbara and I have set forward today. Peek into Tulsa Hub. We're going to share some of our experiences, surprises, and challenges of moving through a startup organization into a more stable, healthy organization, our understanding of what a healthy organization even means, and our decision to partner with each other as strong leaders without destructive competition, and other insights that could inform your future efforts in your mission work. Does that all sound good? All right, so hang in there, left coasters. We are going to get started. All right, so let's turn our wagons west from the East Coast here and take a little journey into the landlocked lowlands, and allow me to show you what I have found to be one of the best kept secrets in the central United States. Who out there has heard of Tulsa, Oklahoma before this conference? All right, lovely. Okay, so do you think you could find it on a map? Oh, oops, that one's a little out of date there. Here we go. Center of the known universe, right there, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Has anyone ever been through Tulsa, Oklahoma? All right, and did you all go because you were on a cross-continental road trip to some other destination, right? Okay. So likely story, here's some of the classic icons and cliches that come to mind, typically at the prompt of Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? We have cowboys, the Bible Belt, once described the oil capital of the world while still navigating the complexity of the moniker Native America. Most Americans not residing in Oklahoma would associate this prodigal mid-sized city with a stop on Route 66 or some other memory of a cross-country road trip through the nostalgic and mythological frontier, where the destination was anywhere but there. Although this is the land of my birth, I grew up on the verge of the new millennium, constantly on the move with a single mom at the helm. I have lived on both coasts and from a home base in Madison, Wisconsin area, as well as in Chicago. I've noticed that a lot of tumbleweeds are cast from and gravitate to this fascinating hub. I like to think of it as the very umbilicus of America. Picture and enjoy this visage. That's northeast downtown vantage from the 1920s vintage. Tulsa and Art Deco came of age together. The young city experienced unprecedented growth and prosperity during the Roaring '20s, flush with oil money and intoxicated by the pure oxygen exhaled from the surrounding forest, valleys, and prairie that surround this little gym, where the indigenous peoples and the bison once roamed before their respective terminal evictions and subsequent cultural amnesia driven by immigrants everywhere else in the world. So fast forward through the nation's bloodiest race riot in 1921 and the post-World War II prosperity which resulted in the staggering genius of the interstate highway system. Thank you, President Eisenhower. This seemingly never-ending vast web of threads of concrete which now connects and frames our identities as motorized and mobile modern Americans. And welcome to Tulsa now. Not unlike many other sprawling mid-sized cities of the Plains or South Midwest or North Texas, when you find yourself arrived in Tulsa, you find yourself spending a lot of time in a motorized conveyance, driving across one highway to another. Nary a bison in sight, you won't see much public transit or sidewalks. Notice the pedestrian goat path there along the side of the road where a gutter or a sidewalk should be. Thus, you won't see a lot of pedestrians or cyclists from your vantage point behind the wheel. No matter the weather, which can range from temperate to tropical to tundra in a matter of hours, you will probably not see a lot of people outside in general besides the others piloting automobiles. Merging across any 6-lane freeway to exit into the downtown core, here at last you'll discover multimodal travel, but the cyclists and pedestrians and transit users you'll see might not look much like you. Here we find the people who are ignored and marginalized by the motorized mainstream, the people who have been overlooked, disdained, forgotten, by accident or by design, made invisible by the infrastructure planners and developers. I think we can all agree that movement is essential to the human condition. For those who have only experienced their movement surrounded by protective screens and at speeds of excess of 60 miles an hour, it could be a great challenge to carefully examine the relationship between movement and mobility. Americans, we all like to believe that we're free to move, but I have found free and equal mobility to be a myth. Some are in charge of it, some are excluded and even imprisoned by it. Let me share with you Tulsa, my home at the river bend, And as I ask you to consider how movement is culturally meaningful, how it affects changes in social condition and social status, movement can be a lens through which privilege and disadvantage, power and powerlessness are revealed. Streets and transportation systems are the civic inheritance of cultures. They are a reflection of the values and priorities of nations, municipal as well as societal. It's fair to say that the planners and developers of my city, not unlike much of the Plains region, shaped it according to moving personal automobiles as quickly as possible from one point to another. I wonder if it ever occurred to them that personal motorized conveyances would not be affordable or accessible to large numbers of citizens, or that there could and would be consequences to pedestrians, the disabled, and drivers of human-powered vehicles. The architects of the frontier infrastructure failed the single mother who has to navigate through a ditch on her way to school. They endangered the student who's on his way to school on foot. They stripped the dignity from the veteran who lost the use of his legs in his service abroad. They confined the elder whose eyesight is too far gone to drive. By accident or by design, the architects of our frontier infrastructure severed a connectivity of a human scale. People are dying in our streets every day from motor fatalities, many involving pedestrians and the people who are physically disabled. And my fellow advocates, why are we still surprised to see that our leaders are too busy to get to work improving the safety for the most vulnerable user of public infrastructure? How now can we see that the street is also a reflection of domination and power, where a hierarchy of size, speed, affluence, and privilege dramatize the relationship between the quick and the dead? I hope I've shown you that at 32 years old, I can no longer not see people suffering from lack of access to safe and effective transportation transit options. I can only ask you to consider this way of seeing because of my own experience. Do you recognize me in a halo? At the close of 2004, when I was 21 years old, a traffic accident resulted in my broken neck and fractures across 8 other bones. I was on my bike when the car hit. Then I was confined to a wheelchair for 2 months. Adam carried me up and down stairs on several occasions. Just as I was learning to walk again, my 19-year-old sister, Felicia, was killed in a car accident in Tulsa. Needing full-time care, I was invited to return to Tulsa, the place of my birth. Like all cyclists, pedestrians, and physically disabled people must answer to drivers of motorized conveyances, I am asked constantly, don't you know how dangerous it is to travel in the street with motorized traffic? And in response, I'd like to know why it's not of more pressing concern that driving is the most dangerous activity any human adult will perform in their adult life. And if the questioner has ever imagined what our streets would look like if they were full of people instead of motorized traffic. It was a miracle that I lived. It is a miracle that we live. I am so proud to live in a land where work conquers all. Tulsa provided me a place to work, to make visible my belief in human power, to combine love of cycling with a passion for social justice, to make up for time that was taken from me. And I call it Tulsa Hub. Tulsa Hub is categorically a syndicate of volunteers on a mission to change lives through cycling. Within this community cycling workshop in Tulsa's downtown, long days and even longer nights are enjoyed in incredible company, refurbishing discarded bicycles and pairing them with people who have been discarded from society. The leadership is 2 full-time staff. Stephen, the other full-time staff person, is traveling with us today. Hello, Stephen. And we have 3 part-time staff and a core group of 8 volunteer bike mechanics and cycling educators, many of whom have been trained by the League of American Bicyclists curriculum and our LCIs. There are 14 members on our working board. Some of our personnel are invested because of previous engagement in our programs. We are a 501c3 social business, which started on 0 budget, and I'll talk a little bit more about the business details just a little later. We execute our mission through 2 programs and several events in the community. The workshop is a multi-generational mentor learning environment, a safe space where people build positive relationships and learn new skills. As an alternative to consumerism, all of our methodology is participation-focused, meaning we value the contribution of people's time equal to their money. Or if they wish to pay for their services, we let them. These are a few of the faces of the 1,400 plus people whom the ACE, Adult Cycling Empowerment Program, engages annually. People lacking abundant support relationships, adequate physical and mental health care, or those simply lacking convenient and accessible transit options to get them to and from work when they have the drive and talent to share. After 5 to 12 hours of volunteerism and bike and safety maintenance education, a high-quality bike, lock, and safety gear can be earned at no cost. Or if participants wish to pay for their services and equipment and training, we let them. Since 2009, it's actually 370 people now have become commuter cyclists through ACE. About 40% of these folks are still in touch with the Tulsa Hub and have reported using their bike to get them to a job or to school or into housing or to the grocery store, to church, to nature, or otherwise mobilize themselves more swiftly into self-reliance. For some, this privilege towards normal means being able to afford to purchase and maintain a car or a motor vehicle. Meanwhile, we're affecting the habits and worldview of the next generation by working with kindergartners through 8th graders at community Title I elementary and middle schools. In my short career, I've had the extreme delight of training and riding in earn-a-bike programs with 700 students in schools and 1,500 or so more at events and summer programs annually. Most of these kids would have never had a working bike to call their own otherwise. It is my understanding that many of these transportation challenges I've described are prevalent beyond Tulsa. I've certainly observed the hopelessness and depravities caused at the intersection of poverty, lack of access to education, and autocentric public infrastructure everywhere I've traveled in the United States and abroad. Bicycling education and human power advocacy is how I enact my responsibility as an American citizen. It means a great deal to me to be able to work in company with architects, planners, business leaders, servant leaders, very smart people, people just like you. A fellow cyclist by the name of Albert Einstein has a quote that I love, which says, "People who have the privilege to know have the duty to act." And I'd like to thank all of you for your actions in the verb of democracy through your work as advocates. So the kids of Tulsa are boomeranging home, just like I am, and urging the civic leadership towards urban infill development and transit options, many of these trends that you're seeing in some of the mid-sized cities and the larger cities all across the United States. All of these mainstream niches of cycling have grown in the past 8 years that I've lived in Tulsa. We have a public bike share system on our River Parks trails. There's a downtown urban core bike share being brought in this year. There's an incredible extensive trails network that's growing everywhere. There are social bicycling clubs of which the Tulsa Hub has no influence or organization with. There's a world-class ride and race festival called Tulsa Tough that happens every June. I hope you all will come visit and check that out. My team and the people that I work with at Tulsa Hub, the leadership, are committed to ensuring that the cyclists our mission serves, people who are utilizing their bikes for transportation because they have no other option, will have a voice in this dialogue because they will be absent from the marketing materials that you see all over the rest of the nation, advertising and touting some of the amazing benefits of this cool little best-kept secret of Tulsa. This team has also helped me learn through our programming, coming to a new understanding that homelessness and poverty are not the problems, but symptoms of the problem, which I look forward to discussing with you whenever you come to visit Tulsa Hub by car or by bike, and hopefully soon by train. In closing, I need to make one thing clear. I myself am a driver, though technically not a car owner, and I love driving, though I can think of few things less lovely than being stuck in gridlock on one of those unbearably hot and humid days. There's a lot more that I love than driving. Complete streets, intelligent design, equal rights, kindness, and justice. Thank you for allowing me to share with you my dream, the creation story of the Tulsa Hub, it has been the greatest honor of my life to offer a simple solution to the complex problems through the bicycling education programs I've conducted as an LCI and with the rest of the amazing people from the league I've had the privilege to work with. It's been the greatest honor of my life to ease the suffering of people around me by loving them through cycling. Here, I hope that I've shown you the reality of what our policymakers claim to want for Americans, adults and children mobilized, happy, safe, and free. So, assuming you all are a little more awake now, how are you doing, Californians? Everybody okay? Okay. So, since I've shared with you the vision, concepts, and people of the mission, what I find most beautiful about the Tulsa Hub, I haven't yet shared with you why Barb and I are really here today. What I have probably not made clear is that upon founding the Tulsa Hub in 2008, I had no experience building a business or leading a nonprofit organization, no professional network or access to sophisticated or philanthropic spheres of influence, and great fear of fundraising and great confusion about the roles and responsibilities and appropriate distinctions between the CEO or staff and the members of the board. I also had great reticence about conventional hierarchy with regard to organizational structure. So it was mostly people in my peer age group, artists 20-somethings, that showed up to create the first incarnations of the board of directors and leadership teams. You can imagine that conflict continued to surface within this board and leadership team, which stunted the growth of the programs and the organization in general. In the spring of 2011, so about 2 full years into the Tulsa Hub concept, I was totally ready to quit this dream. Luckily, an episodic programmatic volunteer who I had met teaching in one of our youth programs had mentioned that she knew someone in Tulsa that was very well connected socially and introduced us. After our initial meeting, we decided that my need was a mentor who could help me develop as an organizer and teach me how to build more mature and sophisticated leadership and governance structures within the Tulsa Hub. She said she'd arrange a meeting with this colleague, and this woman's name is Barbara Bannon. Barb, would you care to join us? So, Barb and I were introduced on a balmy morning at a coffee shop in Utica Square 4 years ago. I will never forget her visage. I've actually asked her to dress similarly to the way she did the day that
I would
we
have
met.
done this weird thing if it weren't for her. So.
And dashing hat and all. So she wore this indoors during our entire meeting, and Barb has since taught me that it's totally legit for women to wear their hats indoors. So I would like to tell you all that I knew when we met that, I just knew that we would have a powerful destiny as a team together. However, I was honestly so exhausted at the moment that we met. I really didn't even know, what I wanted to ask for help about because I was so tired. So Barb, meet my fellow advocates. My fellow advocates, meet Barb. And could you share your impressions and feelings with us as you began to get involved with the Tulsa Hub and the current board of directors and me over that initial year we worked together?
I will. Well, when I first met Ren, as she said, we met over coffee at a local place in Tulsa. And I'm a consultant. I've done organization development for 30 years and training and development. And a friend of mine wanted me to meet Ren, who's this, and it was exciting. I'm always excited for new challenges. And then I got to meet this young, interesting executive director, CEO of a really fascinating organization in Tulsa. And of course, the mission was really interesting to me as well. And I am a cyclist. Of course, I was thinking about there's this possibility. And I do a lot of work with for-profit organizations. And I do some work for not-for-profits as well. And I knew this wasn't going to be a paid gig, But I'm still excited about it because I was excited about the challenge and meeting Ren. We decided that we were going to do some work with her current board, and so I met a few of those board members, and I immediately got a pretty defensive response, but being in the business I'm in, that didn't concern me too much. It's not unusual when a consultant comes into your organization and they're getting ready to muck around in your stuff. It creates fear and defensiveness, so I didn't take that personally. I just let it inform how I moved forward with this group of people. And and I think another thing that added to the defensive behavior on the part of these young people was that Ren brought me to them instead of them bringing me in. She brought me to them, and I think at that time an unfortunate aspect of that relationship was that she was not viewed as a partner with her board. She was viewed as an employee. No, she was viewed as a subordinate. And that was a dynamic that, in order to be effective, needed to change, obviously. But I think that also contributed to the defensiveness. And let's see, what else? Excuse me for looking at my notes. I've got things I don't want to miss covering, so I'm glancing. And of course, the way I looked at Ren, here's this person who's had a vision, young woman, had a vision, made it happen. She essentially did all the roles. She designed all the programs, she did the programs. She had a very part-time mechanic and initially did a lot of the mechanics. She pulled together, or tried to pull together, a working board. Pretty amazing. You would have thought that anyone else would have appreciated that a great deal and think it was as amazing as I did, because I'd seen many organizations, not-for-profits, and she had accomplished quite a lot by herself. It was pretty awesome. But my perception of the board wasn't that there was a lack of passion for the mission. I think they had the passion. What was lacking was the experience and the skills that were needed to help build the structure to move them to the next transformational level. And that was, you can't blame them for that. They were there at a particular level. It was a new transformational time, and we needed new skills. And a lot of these young people, they may have had the skills, may not, but they certainly had competition for their time. And they were starting out in their careers. They maybe were having babies. They were doing education. For whatever reason, they possibly didn't have the time that it took. And I knew it was going to take a lot of time. And my thoughts in relation to a leadership role or mentoring Ren was, oh shit, I'm getting ready to retire. I'm moving in toward retirement. And this is a challenge. I know what kind of time it's going to take because I've done it before and I've helped other people do it before. So I really had to think long and hard about, do I really want to make this kind of commitment? And the aspects that attract me to doing any kind of work now that I am kind of moving into retirement, I don't take anything unless I find it particularly interesting to me, and if I have skills that I think are a good complement. And both of those things were present. And the other thing that makes an opportunity attractive to me is the leader. And what's not to like about her? She's just irresistible. And visionary, a risk taker. And these are all things that came to my mind when I was putting this list together. Extremely bright, has lots of energy, is an intellectual sponge, very articulate, obviously very tenacious, and believe me, she was tenacious with me. I mean, she pursued me very strongly. So, I mean, why wouldn't I want her in my life? Of course, she keeps getting me involved in things like this, too, so, yeah. And we had some very complementary skills. I mean, Ren is an unbelievable salesperson. You can probably tell that. She may have been afraid initially of fundraising, but she's really, really good at it. And the foundations in Tulsa love her. So, you know, she had those skills. I had, and of course, the beautiful ability to articulate the mission of the organization because she created it. She created all the programs. I mean, she knows it. And then I had the ability to help create a foundational and organizational structure and redesign it and rebuild a board that would be in support of the mission and in service to the mission and to the staff. Because I knew that we were going to have a working board. You know, some boards are policy boards, but a working board has to be both a policy board and a working board. And the reason we call it a working board is because we don't have enough staff. We don't have enough money yet to pay them. So we bring in people who, and one of the things that we did to attract people, the kind of people that we really needed was, I'd tell people, look, this is like coming to a startup company. That's the kind of involvement I'm going to need from you on this board. And that attracts a certain kind of folk, and that's what we needed. And we didn't need people who just wanted to sit on a ballet board and talk about policy. We needed people who had the particular skills that we needed and would put those to work for the organization. So that's what we went after, but we had to have a shared guiding vision. And where is our guiding vision?
Yeah, where's our guiding vision, guys? We have more slides for you.
Yeah, right, yeah. As if you didn't get enough slides, but we do have some. Yes. And our guiding vision was to stabilize and grow a healthy organization. And Ren's going to talk to you a little bit about her experience in relation to healthy.
So Barb, as you might recall, I told you all when I met her, I was totally exhausted. I felt totally overwhelmed with the volume of tasks that there were to do in a day. Not to mention the inability to fathom how I would be able to be paid for my work, because I was basically a volunteer at that time. So I myself could become more self-reliant the way that I was looking to inspire and empower other people. You can imagine being involved in every role, or just the feeling that I was responsible for every role was exhausting at times. And the negative feedback I continually received from the board about what was not being done was demotivating, if not downright demoralizing. I was totally unaware of best practices and made a lot of mistakes. I could not imagine growth. There were too many unmet physiological needs of the toddler organization. And how could I possibly, vision a stable, healthy organization that would grow when all I had known up until that point, 2 years of my life in the Tulsa hub, confusion, conflict, constant change. Barbara was the first person that I met that gave me permission to ask for help. She advocated that I tell the truth about how dysfunctional the organizational structure was, and that she taught me that there was only one way out, and that's through. You were the first person who challenged me to reframe what it would take to expand the mission scope and scale as an equal player in a healthy, transparent, and trustworthy leadership team.
Yeah. And of course, for me, I understood that Ren was exhausted, and I understand being so caught up in all these activities that you can't think about the future, you can't think about growing. But we needed to get her in a position where she could, because from an organizational development perspective, if you don't grow, you stagnate and you die. And there were many people who needed to be served by our mission that we couldn't get to as small as we were. We had to grow. So we started working on developing a foundation for growth. And then in relation to healthy, tell us a little bit about your experience.
As a naive idealist visionary, I thought that growth and health were totally reflective of one another pretty exclusively, which I have learned is not necessarily the case. You might remember, Barb, at the time, 2 full years into the lifespan of the Tulsa Hub, the awareness and the brand of the Tulsa Hub was expanding in the community, and demand for program services was exploding. Stress about the budget was increasing exponentially. Meanwhile, the lack of skill, sophistication, and experience, plus this prototypical organizational structure, equaled high drama and high turnover of personnel, including executive board members and key volunteers that were expected to lead the programs that were already happening on the ground. I was aware that the organizational structure was unhealthy. My lack of awareness and lack of guidance about nonprofit and business best practices, coupled with my inexperience in organizational development, caused great suffering and many conflicts within the leadership team and the board over the founding years. I birthed the organization, yet was unaware of how personally I took all aspects of these conflicts. And I kept finding myself in an environment that seemed pathologically opposite to the fun and loving atmosphere of the Tulsa Hub programs. There was dysfunction, distrust, and constant change, and that part of the environment could be totally heartbreaking. I knew that I could do better and that the Tulsa Hub could do better to serve our mission constituents and steward a growing donor base. I did not have the support to accomplish all of the day-to-day tasks and then begin thinking about these goals that Barbara mentioned, which would then strategically advance all aspects of the organization and would attract the type of people with experience and sophistication that we needed to grow a healthier organization. So I couldn't have met her at a more perfect time.
Yeah. And you know, a couple things that I hear when I hear Ren talk about this experience. One of them is that she was aware that she was contributing to some of the problems. Some of it was just her lack of knowledge, but she could acknowledge that, and she was aware of it. And I appreciate that because I work with many executives who have no consciousness or awareness of how they contribute to problems. And believe me, they're difficult to work with, folks like that. So, and one of the things that Ren and I talk about a lot is this issue of awareness precedes choice. If you have no awareness, you have no choice. So if you're stuck in a negative situation or negative relationship and you don't know what you're doing that's contributing to it, then you're going to stay stuck, or you're going to continue to repeat that pattern. And one of the things that I really enjoy about Ren is that this aspect of emotional intelligence, which is self-awareness and awareness of how you interact with others, is critical, as far as I'm concerned, to a great leader. And Ren has indicated that she does have that awareness, and it's been expanding. So I appreciated that. And then additionally, what I heard her talk about was some of the issues and behaviors that really sound like characteristics of an unhealthy organization. And I just want to walk through those with you. There may be others. These are some that just stood out to me. Low trust and fear, infighting, lack of direct communication, people talking about one another instead of with one another. Little ownership of the needed organization structure and processes to support the programs, lack of role clarity, overall lack of healthy behavioral norms. Does that sound like an organization development professional? Yeah, well, these are the things that we noticed and that I noticed, and this is what when this is present, it's hard to grow. When this is present, it gets in the way. And it costs money, and it costs time, it costs all kinds of things.
Have you all ever experienced any of these things in any of your professional life or your personal relationships?
Yeah. So I knew there were a few things that we had to do in order to create a healthy organization structure, and this is how we defined what healthy was going to mean to us. Number one, we needed to identify norms of acceptable and desired behaviors to guide our relationships with each other, the board, volunteers, participants, and staff. These are some of the norms. Now, I believe that you have to consciously talk about these things. And if you're having strategic planning sessions and you're pulling your board together, you revisit what are the healthy norms that we want to function by throughout the year, and you agree on those norms, because then you've got that agreed list of acceptable and desired behaviors outside yourselves, so that when somebody's behaving outside of that, all you have to say is, hey, remember what we agreed to? You know, and it's not arbitrary. It's not me just getting on to you. You know, it's we agreed to these things. So that's what we're talking about in relation to norms. So be open and honest, ask for permission to give feedback, presume innocence, listen, respond instead of react. So those are keys to our norms. Number 2, in terms of a healthy organization, recruit people with particular experience, skills, and commitment to achieve results. Now, I know, being head of a human resource department in a huge for-profit organization, that people, when they have an empty spot, when they need to fill it, they feel the pressure of that need, and they want, sometimes, we got to get somebody in here, we got to get somebody in here. Well, that's true for nonprofits as well as for-profits. But what we had to do was have a more systematic approach to bringing people in. What exactly are the skill sets and knowledge that we need? And let's go after those skill sets and knowledge. And then document an organization structure that would support a growing organization. So I'm not real into hierarchical organizations. I like more of the circular structure, which is what we designed. And then finally, establish foundational tools needed to guide us into the future and attract good people. You're not going to attract good people if you have a chaotic environment. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But so we had to have good bylaws and not go off to the internet and pull down some bylaws and say, these are our bylaws, and we put our name. We rewrote these bylaws to be ours, so they would fit with our organization. Job descriptions and other HR components. We wrote job descriptions for our board as well as our staff that we didn't have yet. So we wanted to be prepared that way. We put together commitment forms, and we put in financial controls, which are things that, of course, all of us need in our organizations. We focused on structure, organization, and norms because this is what we know. We are influencing others all the time, every time we're around them. If you want people who are attracted to chaos and disorganization, then behave in a chaotic and disorganized manner. But if you want the opposite, then provide the opposite to attract what you want and need. Healthy people are attracted to healthy organizations. Unhealthy people are attracted to unhealthy organizations. I believe that. Okay. Oh, now, one of the reasons that I wanted to mention the norms was, and you know, a lot of times people say, well, you know, you can't confront volunteers, you can't confront people who are on boards, you can't confront the people who, you know, come to do the mechanical work. Yes, you can. You can do that, and you need to. You owe it to the rest of the organization to do it. Now, you do it in a respectful and caring way, but you need to do it. We had a gentleman come in, and he had a tendency, he had a lot of potential to contribute to our board, but he had a tendency to be very negative and very adversarial when he brought up issues. And of course, I was president at that time. And it made other people very uncomfortable in our meetings. That's why I say you owe it to other people. You owe it to everybody to create the environment that you say you want. And so I told Ren and I told my president-elect, I said, I've got to talk to, you know, this, I'm going to call him Mike. I've got to talk to Mike about this behavior because it's looking like it's making everybody uncomfortable in our board meetings. And one of two things is going to happen. Mike is going to go, because I'm going to give the feedback in a specific and loving way, and Mike is going to go, thank you very much for that feedback. I really appreciate hearing that. And you know, I certainly will adjust my behavior. I didn't realize I was creating discomfort for the rest of the board. Now he's going to say that, or he's going to get angry and leave. Well, you know, Mike got angry and left, and that was fine, because he did what he needed to do and what needed to happen for the board. Because we agreed on what our norms were, and that was okay, that it wasn't going to work there if he didn't feel comfortable making an adjustment in his behavior. You know, I'm real clear, doing organization development, that there's a difference between talking to somebody about adjusting behavior and changing their personality. I didn't ask him to change his personality. I asked him to adjust the way he brought up issues. That's a different story altogether. Now, you know, some of the big challenges that we had, they're not any different than many of the challenges that you have. Finding the right people. We worked real hard to do that. You know, I wore my friends out, you know, asking them and you know, asking them for contacts, and we went to some leadership organizations in Tulsa, and we found some great interns that now are on our board. Creating a new culture. I knew that we had to have a new culture for the hub. It was, like I mentioned earlier, it was going to be a culture of service to the mission and to the staff as a working board. And then losing board members and key volunteers, that's something that all of you who have boards deal with that. And we created a structure through our bylaws where we would make sure that we had a president-elect. I believe that if you don't have somebody who's right there ready to take the presidency, that you're going to have chaos just about every year. So we structured our bylaws so that we would have a president-elect. And the president-elect's job, which all of our people on the board have a job description, one of the key jobs is to be head of the nominating committee. So their role is to go out and recruit people to be on the board. Now, they don't have to do it by themselves. We also set it up so that our committees, we bring people in to our committees to join board members on the committees, but that's a way we vet them for our board, and they vet us by being on a committee. So we work really hard to come up with a more systematic approach to bringing people in on the board. So those are some of the challenges that we faced. Another one of the issues that we talked about is how do you influence board members and staff to share a common vision and a participative style of leadership. One of the things that we did was to recruit for the kind of people who are attracted to that kind of an environment, the entrepreneurial, startup, working board environment. We targeted people who were interested in that. Another way that you influence them is through team building and interactive planning processes. You market the organization as a participative and thoughtful, and tell your story and encourage questions. And then finally, you're congruent. You talk the talk, you walk the walk, you do what you say you're going to do, and be what you say you're going to be. You tell the truth. And then finally, Ren's going to share with you where we are today and where we hope to be in the future.
All right, so the board is definitely in its strongest incarnation that it's ever been. I really loved working with Barb and continue to enjoy the people that she brought in. I make time in my work schedule to build relationships with individual board members. I definitely cannot encourage that enough for the other executive directors in the room. And our staff has a participatory culture with the board members as well, which may not be according to convention, but we're such a small staff and we have such a huge need for our mission. That's the way that we've decided we're going to work together. It grew from 5 members to 14 under Barbara's leadership, and the president as well as the president-elect are incredible leaders who are very inspiring and very cohesively working with me. We recruited talent from higher profile corporations, which helped us build our budget, a new dimension of our budget. And this budget doubled from $60,000 to $120,000 under Barb's presidency. We received unsolicited multi-year funding from a foundation in Tulsa, and now we're looking at a $270,000 plus scale. We launched our first ever public membership program, of which I hope you all will join as confidence or enthusiast members as soon as you leave this conference this weekend.
I told you she was going to say it.
We are doing our first ever signature fundraising event called Spoke Easy this Thursday, April 23rd, and we hope you'll come join us in Tulsa for that. Our grant and foundation funding is great. We are continually working to diversify our budget and look for new earned income streams. It is a priority for the Tulsa Hub that people will be able to access our services at no cost and have the participation open. And there's so many other things that we could tell you about how wonderfully the Tulsa Hub is growing. So we really hope that you'll keep in touch with us. And what we'd like to end with here is something that Barbara has taught me that continues to ring true for me. Organization structure is the solid foundation that is needed and required to create the safe environment that will allow people to be bold, take risks, and be creative. You all probably have heard that, oh, well, a structure kills creativity. A structure, is something that people rebel against. Well, I can tell you as one of those formerly rebellious types that it definitely is so necessary to allow people to be creative if people understand the common language, the expectations, common understanding, and have a solid structure that they can work from and through.
Great. Thank you, guys.
Yes, please keep in touch.
Yeah.
Thank you. They were great. I learned a lot. I hope you all did too. A few housekeeping notes. Wireless is available, so make sure the password is MBS15. There are limited logins, so you might find from time to time that you might get booted out, but you'll get to join back in, as people gravitate throughout the day. Just so you know, after we leave here, we'll introduce some folks that are going to talk about our networking activity that we have planned for you. But then the breakout sessions this morning, Congressional A and B can be found just throughout these stores. And then the third breakout session is in Renaissance East. So when you round the corner out this way, just to the left. So those are where those are located today. And when we meet back here at 12 for lunch, there are going to be box lunches set out. So as you come into the ballroom, feel free to grab a box lunch and have a seat. And please adhere to the dietary preference you indicated at registration. And this just ensures that everyone's needs are met. You'll have plenty of time today in between sessions. I encourage you to spend some of that time checking out our 21 awesome pop-up shop vendors. They've worked very hard to be able to share their business with you today, and they are an amazing example of leadership through entrepreneurship in the bike movement. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce two very powerful vanguards of the women bike and women cycling movement. Liz Jose of Seattle Bike Works and founder of We Bike NYC, and Dorothy Nichols of Accel North America are now going to take the stage to share with you about our networking event and exercise that they have designed and planned for you. So thank you. Have fun. Make new friends today, and we'll see you back here at lunch after Liz and Dorothy come and share with you.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Thank you all for coming. It's nice to see so many fresh faces, new faces, and returning friends. So did everybody see these little cards on your table? Pick them up. There is one for everyone. If you didn't get one in the room, please pick one up. We're doing something slightly different this year. Let me see a show of hands of people that have been to the summit in the past. Nicely done. And folks that have never been to the summit? Nice. It's a little intimidating coming into a room full of people that maybe you are here with one or two other friends, but it's intimidating when you come into a room of people and you don't know anybody. So we've designed a bingo scorecard for you all to take a look at and try to find people in the room, people throughout the whole summit, the forum, that you have never met before, you want to meet, You see them on stage, you see them, you want to talk to them, but you're afraid, you're intimidated to talk to them. That's my fear, is walking up to somebody and not knowing who they are. But this is for you, okay? This is for you to participate, get to know people, and actually network. So if you have not met somebody in the room and you want to meet somebody, you want to get to know them a little bit more, this is your opportunity right here. And Liz is going to talk about the details of the card.
Thanks. Yeah, so I'm one of those people who walks up to people and introduces myself and immediately forgets everything we talked about. So this is about a way to talk to people. It's like an opener and also a way to record some information so that you can go back and talk to people in the future, because this is just a start of moving forward in the future. So on the front, you have your bingo card, and there are 3 different ways to mark a square. So, for example, it says, find someone who works with youth. So in order to mark that square, you can collect an email address or business card from the person who works with youth, and you can write it on the back here, or put the card in your pocket and then just write an X on it. You can take a selfie with the person and tag Women Bike Bingo. Points for creative selfies. And so there's 2 ways to mark square. So either write their information, get their business card, or take a selfie. And when you get bingo, so when you get 5 in a row, take a selfie with your card and tag it WB winner. And we have prizes. So we're going to have one big grand prize for a blackout bingo card. So if you black out the whole card, we have a really great basil bag that is a side bag but also a pannier, so it fits on your bike and it doesn't cut your hips when you hold it on your shoulder. And then we have some smaller prizes for regular bingos. So do it, you win stuff, you'll meet people, you'll win the greater experience of having hopefully long-lasting connections through this conference. So
That's it. Have fun.
That's it. Thanks a lot.